Hey folks, Lucero here. We've got a patch review for you here today. It's a couple days late. The patch came out 2 days ago. I've been traveling, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and do anything like this. Um, I haven't even had a chance to play like the game a ton. I have done some runs though, like starting yesterday. So I saw that there had been some changes in game, but a lot of this is going to be new. I haven't ran through these yet. This is unscripted. We're going to go through this together. A lot of us have jobs. We maybe don't get to play the game every day. So, or even if you have been playing like me, you've probably only noticed the stuff in game. Maybe you haven't had time to go out and look. We're going to review these together. Let's jump into it here. I'm in the middle of a dually run right now. This is actually what prompted me to sit down and do the video. Is that I couldn't get back on the game. I'd rather be playing than doing stuff like this, to be honest. But I don't see a lot of content like this out here, so that's one of the reasons I'm trying to put something out there for people. But anyhow, I couldn't reconnect. There are a lot of disconnects in the game. It's an early stage game. Usually you can hop right back in, and this time I wasn't able to. So in fact, I went out to see if there's like some kind of hot fix or something happening. The servers were going to be offline. Didn't find anything of that nature, but I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and run through these patch notes. So anyway, Dooley, they changed. Basically, they've kind of nerfed his early game, or it's a significant change. Whether it's a nerf or not, I suppose it depends. But you don't start out with the core now. You get it where you used to get a. It starts at silver, or maybe it's still bronze. No, I think it is silver, but you don't get it. You get it on like day one. Instead of that first skill vendor, you're offered the core, and you get to pick between all of them. So that's a pretty huge change, and a lot of this, some of the stuff I saw in game were like name changes, definitely some reworkings on a lot of the way the items work. Anyhow, so let's get into this. Catalyst right here at the top. This is a big one. I have done some Mak runs, so I noticed this right off the bat. You used to have to buy or sell 3 reagents, and then it would transform and get enchanted. That doesn't work that way anymore. Now, when you sell it, it transforms the smallest leftmost item, and you can get a lot more catalysts now. They've changed some items, like a lot more things give you a catalyst, and this is a good change because there were like if you didn't luck into a potion distillery or is it the Aludel? I can't remember the name of the item, but there's an item that will let you transform a small item into a potion at the start of each day. If you didn't come across either of those 2 items, you would have reagents stacking up in your bags from like Calcinator or Retort. And the catalyst, this change allows you to more actively transform stuff so that you're not just clogging up bag space, which is something I've encountered a lot. So this is a pretty big reworking to the way Mak works, and I think it's a good change. Kind of reduces how many enchanted items he can run into a little bit, because Catalyst was it was a guaranteed enchant on a pretty decent item, and now it's not. But it allows you to transform much more readily, which is like a key part of how Mak works. In one of my earlier videos, I had talked about how some of his large items probably need to change a little bit, and if they change, they have not touched the potion distillery yet, but if they had, like, you're going to change the flavor of the hero. Well, now we see how they're going to avoid doing that. They've made this change. This is just a misspelling fix here on Harkuvian Launcher. Truffles is no longer loot, and it's also not food, so what the heck is it? This is an interesting change. Didn't they... Oh, they changed... They made it to where you can, like, get it more... Yeah, it's not loot anymore. So this is a nerf. This is a revert, too. Like, they had made it loot, and now it's not loot. And this means you can't get it from, when you're offered those chests. You can't get a truffles. So, for one, that's like a nerf to pig. It's also a nerf to vat of acid. So that's an interesting one. It clearly is food. I don't know. Dooley, the 3D printer, it now transforms into gold or diamond depending on the level of the printer. That's a good change. It's probably it's a buff, but it's just kind of it's a logical change. Arc Blaster just gets a little faster here. Here's our first core. It now has a flat shield. And I noticed this in game This is going to be the case for most of them. They now have a flat like use effect, and the scaling on the non-use effect has changed. And so here, the scaling on the shield items when it's charged or whatever is increased from 20, 30, 40, up from 10, 15, 20. Yeah, you only get them at silver now. It's no longer available at bronze, and it's no longer unsellable. So you could get the core and sell it now, and that's a strategy. Like sometimes the core, it's not right to have the core in your build. You'll improve your build by taking it out. So now that's something you can actually get some gold for. They have hit the friends from the expansion here, and this was probably needed in my opinion. You can only get them at silver now as opposed to bronze, and they lose a second off of the scaling on their various effects. Here's slow, it's 1, 2, 3 starting at silver as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4 starting at bronze. So that is a nerf, pretty significant one. Right under it we can see the blue beetle, same kind of thing, 1, 2, 3 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4 now. This is a big rework to Bomb Squad. I did see this item in my run. I had it, and I didn't really notice. I mean, I only had it at bronze, so I didn't notice the change, but now its cooldown can get reduced to 4. And this makes it an item that you can use in like a charge build now, if like in later levels, which that wasn't the case before. So this is an interesting reworking, or time will tell whether it's just a rework or whether it's a pretty big buff, because now the haste on it is static at 2 seconds. Took a second off of Kim Snail's cooldown, buffed its poison, and wow, big change to the way it slow works. It hits multiple items now as it scales as opposed to the duration on one. So that's a pretty big buff to Kim Snail. And it's also going to make it like, in fact, in the run I got cut off on, I've got Kim Snail in my power drill build right now, and it's going to trigger the power drill a lot more. So, previously with power drill you would want a bunch of small items. Now Kim Snail becomes way more effective in a power drill build. Chris Army Knife now can get down to 4 seconds as well, but he's got a flat damage and shield. It no longer scales, so maybe still useful with skills that increase its damage, and you could use it in a charge build. But otherwise I kind of think this is a nerfed hit. I mean, it's a side grade maybe. A companion core gets faster as you level it. It can get down to 4 seconds. That's pretty big. Its haste is kind of nerfed because you don't get it until silver now, and they knocked out the 5-second level. So Copper Ed is buffed. His poison and shield are now static, but he gets much faster, so you can use him. This is like buffing to charge builds for sure, like power drill or some of the friend builds, which are two of the main strats you see with Dooley right now. Critical Core, this is a pretty big buff here. It's got a static 50 damage now, but the crit is more than doubled in some cases. Like the crit bonus is now huge on this thing as you scale it up, 30, 45, and 60, up from 15, 20, 25, and 30. So it's kind of like Dooley's got a crow's nest now. That's very, very interesting. The Ignition Core now has a static burn, but the scaling on its burn is much, much stronger. At 2, 4, 6, up from 1, 2, 3, 4. Induction Aegis gets the same treatment as Chris Army Knife and Copper Ed. He can get down to 4 seconds now and has a static shield and burn. Still iffy on this item. It doesn't have like any tags that you really care about. Laser Pistol's down to 4 seconds. Kind of significant. Same with Power Sander. These are big because, like, in the current meta, 5 seconds is just not quite fast enough for these items to be very viable. Robotic Factory has been reworked. Oh, basically there's a cost for getting that multicast. It's going to increase their cooldowns by 2 seconds at gold and 1 second at diamond. That's a good change, I would say. I mean, it is a nerf, but I think it's appropriate. Solar Farm, this is just a rewording. The core can get down to 4 seconds. and that, charges everything to the right. Now it's got a static 50. Thrusters, this is a big change. It no longer burns at all. Instead, it makes the item to the left into a vehicle and reduces its cooldown. So this is a huge change. Then we've got a massive change to all of its enchants. Yeah, so this is going to open up a lot of different types of opportunities, not just for Dooley, but also for other heroes if you pick up thrusters through, a boss fight or like a burn vendor or something, or I can't remember if it's a tool or not. It's a tech. But, there's a lot of vehicles available to the other heroes, so this is going to be very interesting in terms of how other heroes might use it. But, Dooley has vehicles too, don't get me wrong, but that's a really big change to that item. And there's actually a skill that's like when you gain burn, like that skill kind of becomes useless now. I don't know if it was a Dooley exclusive, but if you gain burn, do X, and so now you can't really give yourself burn as easily if you happen to get that skill, which I have before. It was a pretty successful run. I can't remember if I went 10 or not, but weaponized core gets the same treatment as the others. Big scaling bonus to the weapon damage. Welding helmet, which I previously thought was kind of a junk item, it gets a big buff, so maybe you'll start to see that getting used some more. Its burn is not quite doubled. Yellow Mantis gets the same treatment as the others. Alembic, this is the one that transforms a potion. You now get a catalyst from Alembic. You now get a catalyst from Aludel. You now get a reagent or catalyst from Apothecary. So see, this was a big reworking of how Mak works, because that transmuting is like sort of his niche. And if you didn't run into those certain later game items, well, Potion Distiller you can get early, but if you didn't run into those items, you couldn't really transmute stuff. Now you'll be able to do that way more regularly. Oh, same to Athener, you get a catalyst. Also, it reload adjacent items instead of potions. That's interesting because that's really more of a change for other heroes. Or for Mak, like if Mak happens to pick up a gun through a random weapon vendor or something, now it can get reloaded. But same for other heroes. In particular, Vanessa uses a lot of reload items, and you can get Athener from a boss fight. I think its Hulking Experiment has Athener in there, so if you happen to pick it up, it's not a necessary like instant sell now. That's a pretty interesting change that will definitely affect the meta, not just as far as Mak, but other heroes as well. Boiling Flask is now only available at gold at first instead of silver. Its cooldown is reduced. That's a pretty big buff to it. And it gets the kind of same treatment as some of the above items, like the Robotics Factory. The same change. Their cooldowns are increased. So there's a penalty for getting that multicast on the potions. That's also a soft nerf to Vat of Acid. Laboratory now gives a catalyst. Mirror just gets the item level treatment. It's only available at gold and diamond, so now it transforms into a gold or diamond copy as opposed to an exact copy. So if it's next to a silver level item, it'll still become gold. Morin Pestle now gives you a catalyst. Philosopher's Stone gives you a catalyst instead of a chunk of lead. That's kind of a nerf. You'll get to transform stuff more readily, but that the Philosopher's Stone is available really early, and now you don't get a chunk of lead. So less gold scaling, and that kind of makes sense. Like, I've never had as much gold as on some of my winning Mak runs. Like, I've had over 200 gold with Mak before. I've never had. I know, like, and Pig is the economy hero. So if you've got another guy that's getting way more gold than him, like, it's kind of like, what's the flavor of Pig then? Quicksilver got the same treatment as the Mirror, except it's available at silver. I've used that one since the patch and noticed the change. Runic Great Axe, you feel like this is kind of like a bug oversight here thing. Like, the Runic Great Axe already has 100% crit, So for it to get 50% more from deadly, that's like definitely an error. So they've reworked the way that works, so it's actually beneficial to have deadly on there. Gets double crit damage. Show Globe. This is an item that was absolute trash before, so I've even been offered it in the last couple days and just completely overlooked it. But it's had a huge buff. It now has 3 times the burn and regen as it did at each level, from 123 to 369. So now that's an item to totally look at if you're doing like a regen build or burn build. Huge change that I did not notice because I just didn't even pay it any mind. Sifting Pan now gives you a catalyst instead of a reagent. When you sell a catalyst, it gains 1, 2, or 3 regen. There's already a grammatical error there. Should be when you sell a catalyst. Sunlight Spear gets a cooldown reduction while it levels. Venomander loses its cooldown reduction and just has a flat 6. Some Pygmalien changes. Aurora Dome now has a flat shield, but the shield item scaling when you freeze is much, much higher. It's been doubled. So it's now 10, 20, 30 up from 5, 10, 15. Luxury Kios, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think I'm close. Its cooldown has been reduced, and the item gain, the value gain when you sell a property has been tripled. It's a huge buff to this item. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you're going to see huge burn coming off of that thing now. A big rework to Money Tree here. Now it heals equal to its value, and when you sell a spare change, it gets increasing value depending on its level, and its cooldown is reduced by 1% for its value. That's a big, big buff. And this was an item that was okay in some situations before, but I think you're going to be seeing more of it now. I've tried to use it, I've tried to play around with it, and it just got way more powerful. Ointment now cleanse half your burn and poison. That's definitely a buff because it just had nothing there yet prior. Robe now has a reducing cooldown, so you can use it in a charge build, and its shield goes from 20 to 100. It no longer has a buff to shield items. Instead, it charges itself when an adjacent item is used. Oh, and the 100 shield is because it has double shield. Okay. And then there's some changes to its enchantments. Toxic and Fiery and Restorative were all removed, and that's because of the reducing cooldown. You can't be, buffing your poison or fire items every 4 seconds. That would be way too OP, so they removed it. Makes sense. This is a huge buff to Sauna. It gets I'm not going to do the math on that, but his regen is doubled, and its burn is like not quite doubled. 50% increases, I think. Yeah. I guess I did do the math after all. We have a buff to Silk Scarf here. Its shield gain just ramps higher with each level. Textiles has been completely reworked. You now shield when you overheal. So that's definitely changing the way that item works, and you now want it in an overheal build. It's not like a shield build exactly. Some Vanessa items here. The number of items that the Beach Ball haste has been increased per level, just up 1 at each level. Still 2 seconds. Anglerfish has its cooldown reduced to its diamond level, just a flat at the diamond level of 8, and its burn, instead of being a static 10, now goes from 10, 20 to 30. That's a pretty huge buff to this item, because it doesn't show the whole item, only what was changed. Yeah, it's a charge item. When you slow, you charge it, so that fire increase is crazy. It kind of makes it more in line with like candles, though, maybe even a little more powerful. But so this makes it seem like you're going to be able to pull off some fire builds with Vanessa, maybe more so than you used to be able to. Dive Weights now has a flat 4 ammo, so that's a pretty big buff. It increases his multicast right off the bat. The shield game on diving helmet has been increased. It's doubled across the board. Elemental depth charge gets a buff that reduces its cooldown even further with each level. You can get it down to 8 seconds. That's a good change. It was really way too slow. I mean, it only has 1 ammo too, right? So like, you know, when it was that slow, it just never went off in time. Incendiary rounds has had some changes to a couple of enchantments here. I don't know that I would call that a buff, but it's a change. We got a buff to jellyfish. That's kind of crazy. Jellyfish was already so strong. It gets increases to its poison at silver, gold, and diamond. Diamond is doubled. Lighter gets its burn not quite doubled at the diamond tier, but it's doubled at all the other ranks. Lighthouse now works differently. It now has a flat burn at the previous diamond level, and its cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds as opposed to having a flat 7. That's a pretty big change to have the burn at 20. It's available at silver. 20 burn at silver is pretty high, and this is an item where like I would pass over it a lot of times because you look at its effect and you're like, what can I do with 3 slots? You know, are there 3 small items I could have that are more impactful, or 1 medium and a small that are more impactful? And if the answer is yes, then you're going to not buy this item, and now maybe you look at it a little closer. Okay, this is actually insane. They have buffed pufferfish significantly. Its cooldown, instead of reducing its cooldown, it now has a flat 8 seconds, which was the diamond level previously, and its poison now increases up to 30 from silver to 10, 20, 30 as opposed to a static 10. So I imagine you're going to be seeing a lot more pufferfish again. That's a huge buff. I suppose this is sort of just a, like, you know, when you make it to 8, 9, 10 wins, you're basically like only running into Mak these days, and I think this is going to change that. So while it might seem crazy to buff an item that's already so powerful, I think it's to diversify the late game. Shipwreck gets the trade-off treatment for its multicast. That makes sense. The crit chance is removed. Volcanic Vents gets it's tripled. Its burn is tripled at each level. That's a very major buff, and one that I think that was kind of necessary, particularly at the lower level. Like, you just don't buy Volcanic Vents. Like, 3 burn, like it does multicast times 3, but now this is a very powerful item. So it's looking like burn builds for Vanessa are going to be a thing. Yeti Crab has its poison scaling doubled when you freeze. That's a major buff. So yeah, you know, look out for those Vanessa poison builds again. And the Zorkid's cooldown is reduced by 1. That's the end of the changes there. Some major buffs, some reworkings on some items. This is really kind of, I would say these are mostly buffs. A big reworking to the way Dooley works in terms of the core, and some big changes to Mak's ability to transmute, which I think is a good thing with the catalyst change there. Yeah, so that's the changes. They went live on the 16th. Like I said, you know, this is a few days behind because I've been traveling. Nonetheless, I hope you find it useful. If you enjoy these types of videos or my gameplay videos, I'd appreciate a like or subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again next time.